Yes, my name is Pauline Davies, Councillor Pauline Davies of Leominster Town Council. I've been there nearly 30 years. I've been in Leominster all my life, and I'm very, very interested in Leominster, obviously. Been all Leominster.
Lovely.
Leominsterite we call ourselves.
Leominsterite?
Leominsterites. We're Leominsterites.
Never heard that before.
Yes,
Leominsterite.
yes, yeah, Leominsterite. Doesn't sound very good, but that's what it is.
So, why don't you tell me your earliest hop picking memory?
My earliest would have been about 4 years of age, and we used to gather at the rear of the Clifton Cinema in Leominster. There was a big car park, which wasn't used as a car park in those days, and we used to catch the lorry from there, quite a low number of us, and we used to go to Yeoman's of Cannon. And that was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and the children had to gather together, no matter how old they were or young they were, and get the bonfires going. And they used to have sticks with putting bacon on and boil the kettle, beautiful big black kettle, and it was absolutely very cold the first morning, very cold. After that, we used to go about 7 o'clock. Okay.
Can you tell me where it was you went hop picking?
Yes, we went to Yeoman's of Cannon, and that was the biggest hop yards. And in there was the gypsy community. They had their caravans, and East Enders from London used to come along and have a whale of a time. And at the weekends, of course, they had their, as we'd have it today, parties and things, and they have a big how do you do in there. Yes, it was really lovely. Didn't involve the ones that came from Leominster, but they had a wonderful time there. Most of them went to Pasks of Endale, my aunties, Pasks of Endale, Helms of on the Hereford Road, Davies of Brierley. There was quite a lot, going that way.
Tell me about your mother. Can you?
My mother was a real worker, and she was what they used to call scratting in the cribs. And she worked very hard, and she made sure that I worked hard. When I was about 4 years old, we used to have umbrellas upside down, and we used to help that way, And also the children under, say, 8 or 9 used to have to pick the leaves out of the cribs, so that the bushlers wouldn't take them. You see, if there was leaves in there, you had to get rid of them before the bushler came. That was our job, and also looking after the fire, keeping the fire going. Obviously for food, they used to boil kettles on there, and that was the kids' job, really.
So can you tell me a bit more about that? So when you were 9, you had to go start picking, but between the ages of 4 and 9, can you just tell us the importance of the fire and where you got your firewood from and how it was started? Just paint a bit of a picture for us.
Right. Now the young ones had to go and gather wood to build the fire, obviously, and of course a lot of the little ones used to chase across the fields after, but they did keep the fires going, and it was really, it always tasted different somehow. And the tea, the old black kettle on there, and I'm sure the tea tasted better than the conventional way of doing it.
Did the pickers from Leominster and the pickers from the East End and the pickers in the travel community, did you mix and make friends?
We didn't exactly mix a lot, no. We had our own little gathering, No, we didn't actually. No.
So tell me about when you reached the age of 9. What happened then for you in the hop field?
Well, at 9 years of age, I had to pick ends with my mother. They used to put a division between in the sacking, and we had to pick our own, and at the end of the day I earned £1 10 pence, and I bought a galvanised bath with it to go in front of the fire. That was my contribution. That was a lot of money. £1 10 pence was like 3 or 4 weeks, normal wages. It was a lot of money, and my mother at the end of the day, and most of the women earned somewhere near £30 for about the 4 or 5 weeks of picking there. Yeah.
But can you describe or tell us why it was so important, hop picking, for your mother and women like her?
Well, hop picking was one of the most important things because I think almost no matter what, how wealthy they were, they always had to go hop picking. It paid for the children's uniforms to go back to school, and it helped go through the winter. You know, it really was very important.
But I'm interested in your story of the galvanised bath. So you were 9.
9 years old.
Can you just tell us a bit
yes,
more about
yes,
that?
yes.
I can't imagine my 19-year-old working and getting a bottle of milk.
Oh yes, we had to stay at the cribs at 9, and well, perhaps even younger, some of them. But I was there when I was 9. I can remember that. And the money, it was really important. And of course, the children mostly missed school for about 2 or 3 weeks, and that was not very good. The bomber used to come round, what we called a bomber, used to come round, and he was supposed to prosecute. I'd never heard of a prosecution, but he used to try and gather the children to go back to school. That was very important, but they were so needed out there that they had to work, I'm afraid. When I was 9, I had to pick ends with my mother, and it was 29 and 6, I can just about remember it, and I bought a steel bath to put by the fire, because in those days we had to manage with bowls or whatever. People didn't have bathrooms unless they were very wealthy. It was a very poor time during the war. And that, I suppose, was very good, because I think the bath cost almost exactly the same, 29 and 6. It did, yes, it did. It cost just that. And of course I was thrilled to bits with what I'd earned, and I can't think. I'm getting nervous again. But what else? All right. I don't know what the other children, but the children did work very hard, and those that didn't were in trouble.
Tell me about the bushler.
Oh, the bushler, yes. Sometimes you had a good bushler, and sometimes there was one amongst them that was not very good, and he was very much disliked. So on the last day, whether it was pouring with rain, whatever it was, they used to get hold of him and duck him in the cribs. I can remember that, and but the nice ones, of course, I don't know whether they got anything off the pickers, whether they were helped or at all, but the one that was now, I can remember one in particular, and they certainly took their revenge on him, I can tell you that. Okay.
Well, if you can describe the ladies who you remember picking there, and when you were describing them just now, you said how they dressed and the snuff
yes,
and all that sort of thing. So if you can paint that picture for us.
Right, yes, right.
Yeah,
ready?
Yeah,
okay.
ready.
Sorry, yeah.
Yes, the ladies that came along with us were they had long black dresses, believe it or not, with boots, but spotlessly clean. They had lovely white aprons, because in those days, the washing, they used to boil the things, you know. And they were lovely ladies. The only thing was, to me, it mightn't have affected anybody else, but they used to take snuff. And the brown from the snuff used to come on their upper lips, you know, and I didn't like that at all as a child. I remembered it all my life, you know. I expect it's no different than taking dope today, really, but we didn't look at it that way. My mother certainly didn't, or any of her family, but these ladies did. And
can you tell me, you're in the cop field, you're at your crib with your mum?
Yeah.
What was the process? Can you describe it to me?
How do you mean the process?
What is hop picking? You know, because you said you described it scrapping. So were you putting it? Just if you just describe to somebody who's never stood at a crib before, what did you do?
Right. Okay. Well, at the crib, it was very difficult to pull the binds down, and the mothers or somebody come along and help them, because they were very, very difficult to get down. And yes, pulling the binds down, and they used to stand at the cribs, very industrious, and they used to call it scratting. That's because my mother was a particularly good picker, you know, and most of them all used to say about them scratching. That was the common word for that. Okay.
Lovely. Now, tell me about, I think you called it, let me just look through my notes now. Where have I found it? The bread man.
Oh, yes. At about 12, are you ready?
Sorry.
Okay.
Hold on. Yeah, that's great.
Okay. About 12 o'clock in midday sometime, the bread man used to come, Saunders of Leominster, in their van, and the smell of fresh bread used to go all over the hop fields, and cakes, and it was absolutely lovely. Everybody looked forward to that. And of course the kettle was put on, the big black kettle, and that was a break for them for a short time. But we look forward to. I'm not sure whether he came every day. I think he did. I think he came every day. But they were very welcomed there, I can tell you. Because otherwise it was sandwiches, and I can remember Maggie Reynolds, that's the name, Maggie Reynolds. She used to be absolutely spotless with her white apron, and they used to bring their sandwiches wrapped in muslin, and they always looked so nice. You know, they weren't, as you would think of somebody working out in the fields. They were absolutely spotless, really.
It's interesting you say that, because looking at some of these old photographs,
yes,
everyone is so well dressed.
Yes, yeah, they were poor, because everybody was in the same boat. They were poor, but they were very, very clean, absolutely clean. And it really was. I have wonderful memories of it, really.
So while you were at the crib,
yeah,
and there'd be other people around you, imagine.
Yes.
Were you talking? Were you singing?
Oh, singing mostly, yes. And we'd sing our hearts out going in the lorry in the morning. Absolutely. And going back if we were fit enough to. Yes, we used to always be singing. Coming around the mountains, that kind of thing, you know. Yeah, we had it was good. It was like a holiday, really. A working holiday.
The travellers who used to come.
Yes.
What did you see there?
The travellers used to come along, but we didn't see a lot of them. We probably kept in our own little communities, if you like, from Leominster. I can't remember many of them. I can't remember many of them. But the East Enders, I know they had a fabulous time, especially at Yeoman's, and I believe at Davies of Brierley as well. They had a wonderful time out there. It really was. It's one of the best memories I've got, to be honest, of hop picking. Mm. Okay?
Yeah, we're rolling.
One memory I've got is at the end of the day, the pickers, their hands, and the children, the hands were yellowy black from the pollen of the hops, and the cuts, very badly cut about, and right up the arm. I can remember they used to have scratches all up the arm and cuts. That was one thing that wasn't very good about it. We didn't enjoy that at all. But of course, it came off just as, you know. And the food in the morning, preparing the food, we had large baskets, almost like garden baskets, and we'd have our tea, loose tea, of course, milk in a bottle, sugar, and.
No, that's all right. That's fine.
All right.
Yeah, that still looks fine. It's all right.
Right.
We're rolling.
Yes, in the morning we used to prepare for the day in large baskets, you know, and food wrapped in muslin, lovely clean muslin, sandwiches. It wasn't so much cakes and bread, because they used to come down, Saunders used to come down with their van, and so that was covered. We had milk and loose tea, of course. There was no such thing as tea bags in those days. No coffee, just tea, and sandwiches, and it was really great.
Lovely.
Okay.
And oh yes, I was asking you whether there were any arguments or fights.
Yeah. I believe there was a number of fights, but that was between the gypsies mostly. Not so much, I don't think, about with the EastEnders, but they had a very good time on there, and there was fights, but nothing that we actually saw ourselves, you know. That was all kept quiet, I suppose. No, we didn't have much fighting, not really, and especially amongst our own people, Leominster, nothing at all. We had a good time and singing away in the lorries in the morning and in the evening, and it was wonderful. Yeah, really wonderful.
Tell me about the birch tree and its significance.
Right, all right. Ready? In the mornings, we used to catch the lorry from the back of the Clifton Cinema. There's a car park there, and there's a lovely old birch tree. And that tree is still there today, and I keep an eye on it, and I'm very friendly with the tree warden, and she's keeping an eye on it, because that tree must be, yes, I expect a couple of 100 years old, because it was ready there in its full height in the 40s, and it's still there now to this day, and it's great. And we all used to gather there and get in the lorries. The first morning, of course, was 4 o'clock, and that was a bit early, but never mind, we suffered it. And any other morning, it was about 7 o'clock, and we were out at Yeoman's, within the hour. Okay?
Lovely.
No. Was there some more to that?
Still really. I'm just interested, how did the hop pickers get paid?
We got paid on the last day of picking, and we all used to gather up in the big sheds at the top of the hop fields, and they used to have books with the amount that each picker had, and they used to just pay out in cash. Of course, there was no checks or banks or to bother with. It was just they were just paid out then. Yeah, and when I was 9, I was paid out separately. Yeah, it was wonderful. Really. It must have been about 4, yeah.
Yeah. Just to paint a portrait of life, but...
Well, to my family and friends, and that I can remember back to when I was about 4 years of age, and that's when, that must have been early 40s. And I was very young then, and of course I used to be one of with the open umbrellas and picking into the umbrellas. I can't think anymore. What else was there?
When you were saying that, I'm just interested about when you were going hop picking, was it important to your mother that you looked smart?
No.
No,
I'll have to admit. No, as long as we were clean and tidy and that, you didn't have to look smart to go out there, believe me. No. Do I have to say anything about that? No?
Fine,
no. The women, not my mother, they used to wear these, as I said, these black dresses and that. There was only about 3 of the ladies, and they were getting on a bit, that dressed like that. The other younger ones, because my mother would have only been about in her late 30s, I suppose. But they didn't have to look smart or dress up, as long as they were clean and tidy. That was it, And yeah.
Was there a strong sense of, because it's during the war?
Yes.
A lot of the men were away.
Yes.
Was there a strong sense of community around the hop field?
Yes, I suppose there was. Yes, there was a sense of community. They were all, of course, Leominster was, when I left school in 51, there was only 5,000 people here. Now there's 11,700 since 1951. And of course, everybody knew everybody in Leominster. Everybody. They were either relation or we knew them as neighbours and friends. And it was a very small town in those days. But Leominster has been a very important town. Going back, it was next to Oxford in not popularity, what can I say? Importance. Very important town. And dense gloves and Ryland sheep, all that. It really was.
Yeah, so perhaps, Pauline, you can just tell us about the history of the Mayfair and Leominster.
Yes.
And
yes.
Your petition.
Right. I'll go back further than that. I'll go back to my childhood. The Mayfair used to come in the winter months down at the bottom of Etnam Street by the White Lion. And we got to know the children there, and they used to walk up to school with us. And that was the start of our love of the Mayfair. So in 1987, I was on the town council. My husband was already on there in the 70s. He was on there. And I was on there in 1987, as I said. And I had about 12 months after being on town council, I got a card from Mr. Evans, I think his name was, from Wales. And he asked me, he requested that I could try and get the Mayfair back because he heard that I was so interested in the Mayfair as a child. So I petitioned, and I'd done it all on my own. My husband wouldn't get involved in it, although he loved the Mayfair. And I used to stand on the street corners in the square, bottom of every street, and I got a massive petition because it was mostly majority, I suppose, of Leominster people, and they loved the Mayfair. The kiss me quick hats and all this, you know. And eventually it got through Hereford County Council, and then, well, first of all, Leominster Town Council agreed to it, to have the Mayfair back in the streets. And there was a lot of opposition as well. But it came back in 1990, and Molly Cook was mayor then, and I had the first say of when the day it opened. It was absolutely wonderful. All the lorries come rolling in, you know, it was a wonderful experience, and everybody, most Leominster people, loved the Mayfair. But we did have a lot of, quite a few shopkeepers had a lot of reasons for it not to come back in. They said it'd take away their trade and everything, but that was rubbish. It was a wonderful day. That was in 1990, and it's now 2016, and the Mayfair is there still. It's got another couple of years to go. Now, the Mayfair boss was A.B. Morris. I believe his great-grandfather was Mr. Studd, who kept the Mayfair, and he went to school in Leominster because they had the Mayfair in those days. Not the Mayfair, the fair during the winter, down in Etnam Street at the White Lion. Anyway, we got to know A.B., and he was the Mayfair boss with his daughter Jo, who runs the fair now, and his family. Anyway, it's been very, very good. We've had very few complaints. There was a fight on the actual day. They picked on my husband, Ben, who had been mayor, and Peter McCall, Councillor Peter McCall.
Sure.
Is right? Is
On the day.
Oh, there was a fight on the day. Yes, he's passed away now, but they picked on my husband. Peter McCall, Councillor Peter McCall, came to his rescue. After that, we had several petitions over the years, because don't forget that was 1990, and then they'd have, say, a couple of years, and then they'd have to apply again. There was a little bit of a niggle from some of the people in Leominster, the shopkeepers, but gradually they came to accept it and quite love it, in actual fact. There's no problems anymore. The last time they had 7 years, and I think they've got 2 years to go, and they'll apply again. But there is talk now of Leominster Town Council has taken over the markets, and of course the markets and fairs, it is on the charter for 1554. And really and truly there'd be a heck of a thing if they got it out of the streets again. I don't think they would be successful, quite honestly, because it's too popular now, very popular. We have a wonderful time. We go down, the whole town council go into the square at the opening. We have an opening every year, and of course I'm invited every year, regardless of whether I'm councillor or not, because I got it into the square, and there was nobody else. I done that completely on my own, and I'm very proud to say that I did. It's lovely, and I keep in touch with A.B. died about 2 months ago, and he was and his daughter Jo Morris, she's taken it over, and she's making a good job of it. And David and the other son, and young A.B., they do fairs all over the country, but Jo does Leominster.
Can we just do that again? Because could we just say who they are? They're from the Showman's Guild. Would that be okay?
Yeah, what with the family?
Yeah.
The names of AB and his family, yes.
Yeah, just so we put it in context for anyone who might be looking at
right,
this.
Right.
It wouldn't happen without the Showman's Guild, would it really? They would...
Oh, yes. The Showman, not filming now, the Showman's Guild stopped about 5 or 6 years ago. So we didn't go to Solihull or Dudley for the annual, Showman's Guild lunch. But now it's just started again this year, and the mayor came along, and the mayor, deputy mayor, and myself, and Councillor Peter McCall, because he's another enthusiast of the fair. And it's lovely, really lovely. Good, what they call the chain gang, all the Birmingham mayors of the day, big fat mamas and all this, they've all got their chains on. I've got the Birmingham Post there with our photographs in. And it's wonderful. It's tradition, that's the thing.
So have you formed a good relationship with the guild?
Oh yeah. Yes, but as I say, there was that gap, you see, from it for about 4 or 5 years, and now it's started again, so we're getting to know them again now. But yes, we had a good relationship, the Midlands one, yes, very much so.
Did you ever go to the Hereford Mayfair?
Oh yes, the mayor of Hereford always invites the mayor of Leominster. And they have a dray, and the rent was done years ago in Victorian times, I suppose, in the beginning of last century. They weighed the wheat in Hereford, and wonderful. And we were always invited back to the mayor's parlour there. My husband and I both went to that, and every mayor since goes to the Mayfair in Hereford. Wonderful. What?
Did you go to the fair in the 40s, 50s and 60s?
Oh, when as children we always the Mayfair, and we used to cry our eyes out when the Mayfair went. And the morning it used to go from the square. The Noah's Ark was always in the middle of the square, and we used to collect the threepenny bits and sixpences as they were clearing the Mayfair away. The children used to go and collect the money from under Noah's Ark. Yes, it was always absolutely wonderful.
Because there are, like you touched on, there are some people who really don't like it. Why do you think it's important for somewhere, a town like Leominster, a city like Hereford, to have their Mayfair?
Well, it goes on tradition as much as anything, but it is important to the town. The ones that are against it, obviously, they grumble about it. But today, and over the years, that's all stopped. They rather like it, and I think most of the shops do well, especially down Broad Street. They do very well out of it. People do gather into the square, but I know when it first came into the town, they didn't seem to feel that way at all. Well, not all of them. There's only about 3 shops in Leominster that was like that, but I think they found that it's good for them, good for business, and yes, they love it.
Pauline, just tell us a time you had some American visitors to the fair.
Yes, it was in 1995, and it was the year I was mayor. And we had a couple of Americans, and they loved it. They loved tradition and the feel of an old market town, if you like. And they didn't exactly go on the fair because they were, middle-aged, going for elderly, but they had a wonderful day. And it really was lovely. Right.
Okay, cameras rolling.
Of course, the one big person in the Mayfair was A.B. Morris.
Sorry, can we start again? A car stereo just went by. It was had a bit of dum. Sorry. Okay.
When you're ready, Pauline.
Right. The one big thing about the Mayfair was A.B. Morris. I think he was relation to Stud, who was very popular in Leominster in the 20s, 30s, and ran the Mayfair, and he's a wonderful man. Quite a number of us went to his funeral quite recently. He died about 3 months ago, and he was a gentleman, and got a lovely family, which his daughter now is running the Mayfair, Jo. Is that all right?